On August 9, 2024, a horrific incident occurred at a government medical college and hospital in Kolkata, India, leaving the entire country in shock. Manita Depan, a second-year doctoral student and promising intern, was the victim of an unimaginable brutality. She was gang-raped and murdered in the hospital, where she should have been the safest. The incident quickly spread across the country, sparking outrage and massive protests, as thousands took to the streets demanding justice for Manita. But what really happened that fateful night? And why does this crime raise suspicions of a cover-up? Manita Depan, a second-year medical student at Kolkata's medical college, was once the embodiment of dreams and ambitions, a ray of hope amidst the hardships of the medical profession. Her dedication to her profession, compassion and hard work made her a source of pride, not only to her friends and colleagues, but also to the patients she cared for. But Manita's life of potential was cruelly and painfully snatched away when she fell victim to an intolerable crime of gang rape and murder at the very place she devoted herself to. Manita's death was not just an individual tragedy but also exposed the dark shadows hidden deep within society. When her body was discovered with signs of torture and violence, it was not just the loss of a talented young person, but the exposure of a horrifying truth. The truth became even worse when the people in charge at the hospital deliberately covered up the crime by falsely informing Manita's family that she had committed suicide. This cover-up made the incident even more gloomy, causing public opinion across the country to not only be shocked but also angry. Manita, a person with a kind heart, had always devoted herself to caring for and healing others. But in the end, the very place where she had devoted herself became the place where she was brutally murdered. Outrage spread across India as thousands of doctors, colleagues, and people stood up to demand justice for Manita. The wave of protests demanding transparency and safety for medical staff not only flared up strongly but also shed light on the dark corners behind a medical system that seemed safe but was full of injustice and danger. Manita's tragic life and death is not only the story of a victim of violence, but also a symbol of the relentless struggle of women who face violence and injustice right where they should feel safest. Manita's story does not end with her, but continues to live on as a wake-up call to society about the inequality that women have to endure. Will justice be served for Manita, or will her case be just one of countless crimes forgotten in the flow of other chaotic events? The truth about Manita's fate remains a big question, and the wait for justice for her continues. Manita Depan's body was discovered just hours after she went missing at the hospital where she worked. It was not a simple discovery. Her body bore the marks of brutal violence, a gruesome testimony to the ordeal she had endured before losing her life. The autopsy further outraged the public by confirming that Manita had not only been gang-raped but had also endured brutal torture. A staggering 150 milliliters of semen was found in her body, a haunting detail that added to the brutality of the incident. She had also been strangled to death, and there were severe injuries to her arms, legs, and around her eyes, indicating that she had been tortured for a long time before her death. Not only did the gruesome details of Manita's death cause outrage, the case also sparked outrage over the way the hospital initially handled the case. Manita's grieving family was shocked once again when the hospital announced that she had committed suicide, an unacceptable statement considering the brutal marks on her body. This information immediately raised suspicions of a cover-up. Many began to ask, why was the truth so blatantly distorted? Who was trying to cover up this terrible truth? Manita's story was not only a personal tragedy for her family, but also a symbol of the outrage of an entire nation. The evidence gradually emerged not only exposed the brutality of the crime, but also raised serious issues about transparency and fairness in the way the case was handled. From the obvious signs of brutal torture on Manita's body to the initial misinformation, it all paints a questionable picture of whether those behind this crime were protected by someone in power. While the medical community and people across the country have risen up to demand justice for Manita, the truth about her heartbreaking death has yet to be fully revealed. The hidden details, the lies told in the first hours after her body was discovered, have left the public asking, why was the truth distorted in the first place? Is there a force behind the efforts to bury justice for Manita? The quest for justice for Manita is not just about punishing those who committed the crime, but also a larger struggle to expose the truth and protect women like her, who face violence even in the safest of places. The rape and murder of Manita Depan has gone beyond a personal tragedy and has become the spark that ignited a wave of outrage across the country. Indians, especially the medical community, could no longer stand idly by and watch without action. Doctors, nurses, and healthcare workers from all over the country have come together and taken to the streets to demand justice for Manita. They have demanded that the government not only bring the perpetrators to book but also provide better security to hospitals and healthcare facilities, places that have become hotbeds of sexual violence against women. The 24-hour strike, led by the Indian Medical Association (IMA), has not only paralyzed non-emergency healthcare services but has also sent a strong message to the government. Healthcare workers no longer feel safe working in an environment that should be protected at all costs. Manita's case was the last straw, exposing the lack of responsibility of organizations and authorities in ensuring the safety of women working in the medical profession. The protest was not only an act of demanding justice for Manita but also a strong call for necessary changes in policies to protect medical staff, especially women. Stories of many female doctors and nurses being regularly harassed and sexually assaulted at work began to be shared, further highlighting the instability and danger they were facing. Hospitals, which were supposed to be places for healing the sick, now became places where women in the medical profession had to face fear for their own safety. The protests quickly spread across major cities like Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, and many other areas. The image of doctors in white coats standing in front of hospitals holding banners demanding justice for Manita became a symbol of the fierce struggle. Not only medical staff but also thousands of people participated, expressing outrage at injustice and demanding change. The government cannot ignore this wave of outrage. But will their actions be enough to meet the expectations of thousands of doctors and citizens? Will this outrage lead to concrete changes, or will it be buried under the indifference of the system? These questions remain unanswered, and the wait for justice for Manita continues to spread across India due to the seriousness and complexity of the case. The government had to transfer the entire case to the Central Bureau of Investigation as soon as Manita Depin's body was found with many traces of horrific violence. This was a necessary measure to ensure that the investigation process was conducted with transparency and fairness, without interference or concealment from related parties. The Sabi quickly swung into action, and soon at least 25 suspects were arrested, including a former boxer who many sources believe was directly involved in Manita's rape and murder. But the unusualness of the case did not stop there. As the investigation deepened, new questions began to emerge. Some evidence appeared to have been falsified or deliberately concealed, leaving the public shocked by the possibility of complicity on the part of some hospital staff. The question arose, how could those responsible for protecting Manita and uncovering the truth have been involved in covering up the crime? These questions turned the case into more than just a case of rape and murder, but also opened up a host of other issues regarding the transparency of India's healthcare and legal systems. Public outrage was further heightened when the media began to expose other illegal activities at the hospital. In addition to concealing and falsifying evidence, the hospital's leadership was also suspected of engaging in illegal activities such as trafficking corpses and biomedical waste abroad. The hospital's delay in returning Manita's body to her family has raised questions about the underground activities taking place there. The hospital's delay in returning Manita's body to her family has raised questions about the underground activities taking place there. The allegations extend beyond the hospital itself to the channels of transporting and selling illegal medical supplies abroad. The complexity of the case has raised further questions. Who is behind this cover-up? Are those arrested the main culprits or just the tip of a larger criminal network? The involvement of powerful figures in the hospital has raised further questions about the extent of the connection and the ability to cover up the crimes in this case. Can the case be solved completely, or will it be buried under layers of power and the complexity of the medical and legal systems? Manita's case, from a personal crime, has become a symbol of the lack of transparency and dark conspiracies behind the doors of hospitals, which are supposed to be places of healing but have become places of concealment. New developments in the Manita Depin case continue to rock the Indian public. As the Central Bureau of Investigation (PB) investigation continues to progress, all eyes are on the surprising discoveries about shady activities at the hospital where Manita worked. The case has exposed a complex criminal network involved in trafficking corpses and biomedical products abroad. The connection between these underground activities and the hospital management has increased skepticism about the transparency of those at the top. Multiple sources said that the investigation discovered that the hospital leadership was not only slow in returning Monita's body to her family, but also showed signs of concealing other shady acts. Evidence of document forgery and falsification of information about her death has raised questions about whether anyone in the hospital had the power to manipulate the outcome of the investigation. Suspicions that those responsible for protecting the lives and health of the community were involved in criminal activities have only made the story more complicated and darker. As the media continued to report, the developments surrounding Monita's case became more and more mysterious. Perhaps the story of her life and death was not just a murder, but the tip of a much larger iceberg covered in conspiracies and dark power. The links between these crimes and international organizations have left the public wondering, will the case ever be solved? Or will the criminals escape justice thanks to their connections with powerful people? The fight is no longer just about bringing Monita's killers to justice, but also about exposing all the illegal activities that took place behind the hospital's doors. Will the people in the medical community have the tenacity to continue to seek the truth? Or will the case be buried under layers of intertwined power and terrifying silence? The crisis following Monita Depton's case has not only paralyzed India's healthcare system, but also become a mirror exposing the deep-seated malaise in society. India, already criticized for its gender-based violence, is now faced with a heartbreaking story that is a reflection of a reality that many people still choose to ignore. What makes Monita's case particularly shocking is not just the brutality of the crime, but also the fact that she was not a woman from a lower or overlooked caste. Monita, on the other hand, was a highly educated, promising intern, respected by her peers in society. Monita's death has shocked and even shaken the faith of many. If even a woman like Monita, with all the protections and status in society, has to face such terrible violence, what must women who have no name, no status in society face? How many other women in the lower castes are suffering in silence and unheard? Monita's case is just a small example in the larger picture of gender-based violence that is spreading across India. Protests, strikes, and waves of protest have spread from Kolkata to other major cities like Mumbai and Hyderabad. But are these protests strong enough to change a society that is deeply conservative and sexist? Many fear that no matter how many perpetrators are arrested, no matter how many protests take place, real change in India's social system is still a long and arduous journey. Barriers of tradition, caste, and entrenched ideology stand in the way of any progress. The biggest question is, when will India truly confront and address the issue of gender violence? Will the Monita case be a true turning point, or just a temporary event in the flow of injustice that has lasted for decades? The investigation into Monita Depton's death is still ongoing, but what the case has revealed has shocked the nation. The case is not just a horrific crime, but also a picture of a worrying reality in India. Gender violence remains a persistent, painful, and dangerous problem. Although Monita was attacked in a hospital that should have been a safe place, it clearly reflects the instability of the working environment there, not only for her but for women in general. The initial investigation, with its shocking details, such as the semen found in the victim's body, added to the tension. Although the police later dismissed the rumor, public opinion was thrown into a spiral of outrage, demanding transparency and fairness in the investigation. This shows that, even in cases that have attracted national attention, the truth is sometimes hidden, raising public doubts about the transparency and honesty of the investigating agencies. The Monita Depton case is now not just the story of an anonymous victim, but has become a symbol of the struggle for women's rights, not only in the medical field but also in society at large. It raises big questions about women's basic right to safety in India, a country with a long history of gender-based violence and discrimination. Why is it that a young, educated, and respected doctor like Monita cannot be safe in her own workplace? What threats do nameless, statusless women face every day? The protests and strikes by millions of doctors across India are not just a protest for Monita, but also a voice for millions of other women who are forced to suffer in silence. Although the investigation is still ongoing, the case has revealed a larger picture of injustice and lack of protection for women in society. This is no longer an isolated issue, but an exposure of a systemic problem of women's lack of safety in their own working environment and daily lives. Will the Monita Depton case be a turning point for the legal system and social ideology in India, or will it continue to be buried amid similar crises, with justice remaining a distant dream for women here? The Monita Depton case is not only a painful personal tragedy, but also a profound wake-up call to the problem of sexual violence and lack of safety in the working environment for women in India. This is not an isolated incident, but has exposed systemic problems that have persisted for years. This heartbreaking truth has made many human rights organizations and health agencies unable to sit idly by. They have spoken out strongly, calling on the government to take stronger action, not only to prosecute those involved in Monita's death, but also to protect millions of other women working in the healthcare environment, where the risk of sexual violence is always evolving. The investigation is still ongoing, but Monita's case has gone beyond a criminal case. It has become a symbol of the fight for women's rights and justice in the healthcare industry. Monita's death highlights a terrifying reality that even educated, socially respected women like her are not safe in the very environment they are dedicated to. Monita's story has sparked protests across India, with thousands of doctors and healthcare workers standing up to demand justice not just for her, but for all women who face similar risks. The solidarity of India's medical community and society in the face of this injustice has created a powerful voice, forcing the government to listen and act. But the question is whether the government can bring about real change. The protests reflect not only outrage at Monita's death, but also discontent with a legal system and society where sexual violence is still all too common and often ignored. This fight is not only a demand for justice for Monita, but also a call to protect other women from violence so they can work and live in safety. The brutality that Monita endured in her workplace has brought to light the horrifying reality that women here are not only at risk of being attacked in the public eye, but also in the supposedly safe spaces of hospitals. This barbaric act has not only shocked the public, but has also pushed the fight for justice and women's equality to a new level. Monita's case has become a symbol of a fight that goes beyond just demanding justice for a single victim, but has expanded into a movement for the safety and rights of all women, especially in the healthcare sector. The protests spread across major cities in India, attracting the participation of millions of doctors, nurses, and other healthcare workers, demonstrating a strong solidarity. These people are not only demanding justice for Monita, but also demanding that the government introduce more effective protections for women in the workplace. The long strike, which has brought many hospitals and clinics to a standstill, has become a powerful voice against sexual violence in the health system. From Kolkata to Mumbai, from Delhi to Hyderabad, the slogans are, "We want justice and no safety, no service." It is not just a call for protection for a deceased victim, but also a call for comprehensive change to protect all women from the risk of attack. The strong response from the medical community has sent a clear message to the government. No one has the right to be silent in the face of injustice and violence. Through their solidarity and determination, they have forced the government to reconsider its policies and take more concrete measures to ensure women's safety. However, this fight is not just about punishing the perpetrators of Monita's case, but also a long-term fight to achieve equality and safety for women in India. Can this resistance change the system and protect future women from similar dangers? Or will this be just another case lost in the chaos of society?